Welcome to the Kawartha Small Business Podcast, where we believe the Kawarthas can be the most thriving region in Canada for small business. I'm Brian Rump from Profit Coach.
And I'm Matt Garrity of Matty G Digital.
And before we get started, head over to kawarthasmallbusinesspodcast.ca and download Matt and Brian's marketing checklist for Kawartha Small Business. All right, Matt. Today we are talking about finances, and specifically, are you afraid of finances? And are you afraid of finances?
Yes and no. I think that I do, and I built the businesses with finances in mind, which I think puts me ahead of some people. I don't think finances scare me because, it's the whole point of what we're doing. It has to be one of your main considerations daily, actually.
Yeah, I think that's a good comment from you, and it should be that. But I think for a lot of people, it's not. And when I talk to a lot of people in small business, they'll say things like, "Well, I'm not really a numbers person." Or it's like, I jumped in, I started doing this, but the money's not really my thing. And they kind of ignore it or are afraid of it a little bit. And I guess I just want to talk through some things of how do we break that down a little bit? How do we get over those fears? And how do we get to that point where we're looking at it, at least in some way, almost every day?
Yeah, and money is scary. Money can be concerning when you are a passionate person that has an interest in something and you start a business. You may not be coming at it from a business perspective, or you might not be a numbers guy, but I'm not a numbers guy. I think I've gotten better at math actually since I started my business 3, 4 years ago because it's something that has to be there. And you don't need to be a numbers guy to figure out your business and understand your finances. Not to right away say this, but you need a who. You need an accountant, bookkeeper, or someone that just understands what you're doing this for. You can't just be going every day thinking, oh, I'm running this marketing business and I'm going to save the world, or I'm running this marketing business and all I care about is how many trees I'm going to plant from it. You need to understand finances. You need to understand money. Is it profitable? Is it hitting goals that you want? Do you want to make $2.6 million? Do you understand what it's going to take to get there? Do you have any clue how to process that and the systems that you need to do that? Whether it's 2.5 million or a million or 100 grand, you need to figure out how to get there, and it's all finances.
Yeah, you're right. It is finances. I think early on, in what you said there, you talked about, you don't have to be a pure finance guy. And I think that's the big thing I would like most people to understand is, you don't have to, have an MBA in finance to run a business. Like everyone can do it. Everyone should be able to do it who really wants to tackle all of those things. You do have to learn and improve parts of your math and understanding. You do need probably some guides, people to help you along the way with some of that. Um, but at the end of the day, there's no magic tricks. Like I think when I got into working in finance, I thought there was, oh, I'm going to learn some really fancy tricks, really advanced stuff. But when it boils down, it's all the same basic things. For Profit Coach, I call them like the essential financial frameworks that people need. And there's, not everyone needs everything, but when it comes down to it, it's kind of a lot of, applying simple math.
Right. Don't they say math is the universal language? Doesn't matter if we're here in the States, Europe, wherever. It's all the same. It's all numbers. There are no tricks with numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. There's really no tricks. There's no numbers. There's understanding, some of the advanced stuff is understanding the stories they tell, being able to relate numbers to behaviors sometimes, or, connecting them with trends. So that stuff is important. But I think, if you're going to be in business, the faster you can get over that fear of finance, and that fear could be, just, hey, I need someone on my side who can help explain this stuff to me, or help um, make me understand how this relates to like other aspects of my business. The faster you can do that, the more set up for success you're going to be.
You know what it has to do with? Whether it's finance or any of these things that we've talked about on and off the podcast, about people that are afraid to ask, they don't want to find who's, they need to be involved in everything, or they don't think their business can run. It's ego. It always comes back to that. And I think it's even more difficult for business owners, because I think every person probably has an ego. Every business owner absolutely has an ego. Every single owner at one point thought, I can do it better than somebody else. I have the capabilities to do it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with thinking that, but I do think there is something wrong about your ego getting in the way of being able to ask and being able to find people that are experts, and admitting that, you know what, I need to ask an accountant bookkeeper this, or I am not an expert at accounting and bookkeeping. And if people could just get in out of the way of their own ego and put that aside, I think they'd really see their businesses thrive.
Oh, I think so. Yeah. And it's, again, finding the right help, knowing what that help does,
Sure.
knowing that at the end of the day, you're still the one in charge of what you want to do with your business. Um, One of the things that, accountants account for where money goes. They're not necessarily the best at helping you get more, or uh, helping you keep more. Like, they're going to help with maybe tax minimization and help with the clarity of where it's all going. Bookkeepers as well, they're going to do the data entry, and making sure they're catching everything and giving you those numbers, which is all part of finance. But there's also the, how do you go get more money? What are the things that impact getting more money? And you're going to still be in charge of that. So you're not completely surrendering control as a business owner. And I think the ego is some of that. It's like, hey, I can do everything myself. I'm in charge. So you could still be in charge. Again, you need to get over the ego part of like asking for help and find the right help. But you don't need to be afraid of it and ignore it.
Yeah, I remember the first year that I did taxes on, not my own, for accounting, or sorry, for Matty G Digital in the first year. I didn't do it on my own. I did have an accountant, but at that point I didn't have a bookkeeper. So the questions that this accountant was asking me at the time was just like a long list of all this stuff that I had to collect and find and put together. And it took me, it probably doesn't sound that long, but 8 hours. It's like a full business day of just data retrieval or finding stuff that this person had asked me. And then, frankly, at the end, I was like convinced that they weren't asking certain questions about some things that had gone on, like purchases, no, not purchases, sorry, but sales in the States and the tax stuff there, where I just realized I need someone that understands not my business. They don't need to be the ones doing the marketing, but they need to know what's going on numbers wise. Here's all the receipts for the month, all that kind of stuff. And I now work with Greg Evans Professional Corp, and like every month, the amazing accountant bookkeeper that I'm working with, she's not going out and retrieving the receipts for me. I still have to like make sure we have a process and a plan and a system that they've given me to send in the receipts. And then every couple of months, she tells me how much I have to pay for HST, or now like payroll, remittance, and all these things, which I would not have known before. I would get like late notices because I missed a deadline, or like it would just be absolute chaos. And like they very much just become the guide. And like you said, they provide clarity and making it so much simpler to just do the things I'm good at. Or instead of having to spend 30 to 60 minutes figuring out my HST, and then thinking, did I forget something? Where's this receipt? Like all these things. It's all just taken care of. I just have to do a couple things versus 100. And that maybe you will probably point this out at one point, but the biggest benefit I ever had having worked now with an accountant bookkeeper was when I needed to borrow money for a new business. I was not in trouble with money. I did not need money because things were collapsing or whatever. It was a new business. It was Thrive Co-working Community. And I need money and capital to get that going and like to get that vision out there. And because of the work that you helped me with, but also like you've mentioned, having that accountant bookkeeper for last year. So like these numbers were in order. We sent stuff over to BDC. We got approved like so quickly. And I remember even asking you and Heather over at BDC, I was like, that seemed really easy. And you told me after, like, everything was in order. It's because you had the accountant bookkeeper. Like, these numbers were in order. Like, we had a good plan. It was all just super straightforward to them. And that was probably one of the biggest obstacles and hurdles we had to overcome the last couple of years. And it was so easy because of it.
Yeah, and that's a financial reality of there's no way Thrive would be happening at the same timeline if you were digging through your closet looking for sort
Yeah.
of financials and handing over to the bank sort of some spreadsheets with stuff on it because there's no third party assurance at all there, even if it's not like an official assurance. It's just kind of made up numbers that maybe are accurate, maybe they're not accurate. um, Having those things together really helps. And what it frees you up to do is, when we talk about finances and the fear, some people are afraid to like try to figure out how to do their own bookkeeping or do their own taxes. And to me, those aren't like, the finances that help you generate wealth. Like you're
Mm.
not generating wealth if you're sitting and tracking down expenses and like plunking them in. You're generating wealth when you're taking the data you have and seizing opportunities. So if it's a new business venture, or you're looking through and realizing, hey, this product's not making me any money. Like, why am I offering it? Or you think, hey, this product's making my customers a lot of money. Maybe I need to increase my price on that one. When you're making those types of decisions, or you're understanding things like how good bookkeeping and accounting helps you then get financing to grow. Because if you look at most really successful businesses, they've all used debt as a tool. And, in personal finance, there's a lot of, debt is bad people. And in general, I think, you have to figure out your own risk tolerance and, balance debt and how it impacts you, as a business. Again, depending on your business, it's an important tool to leverage your growth. And if you manage it properly, you can generate a lot of wealth. If you don't manage it properly, then things could go really bad for you, and you could lose everything.
I remember when I was talking to, again, Heather at BDC about the monthly like repayments for the loan and just like the way numbers are going to work out. I was like, well, realistically, like we could pay it off a lot sooner if everything goes the way it's planned. And she was like, no, don't do that. It makes no sense. And it's taken me like almost 3 or 4 years to understand cash flow more than anything. Cash flow is more important than debt. Cash flow is more important than so many other financial things. It's like cash in hand. What do you do with it and when do you do it? Why, if you owe 5 grand in 6 months, would you pay for that right now when there's other priorities and other things that are way more critical to your business at this time and moment when you have that money in hand?
Yeah, and it's wrapping your head around things like that. So cash flow, keeping cash in hand, making sure you're taking some as profit for you, sort of as your business. And we've talked before about profit first and managing that. But part of your finances is cash flow, and that's sort of the life force of your finances is cash coming in and out. Without cash coming in, you can't grow your own wealth, you can't pay your bills, you can't pay off debts. Like cash is king, right? There's a reason they say that. So um, to understand again how to flow that, and reasonable debt repayment. If you end up with a large surplus, yeah, maybe you might decide to repay certain debts faster than others. You might pay yourself, but having that cash gives you choices, right? And you can choose, whether you're growing more, whether you're, taking more. There's It's good to have that choice versus the opposite, which is, I have no cash and I have something due next week. I need to figure that problem out.
Yeah, absolutely. Why do you think people are afraid of finance?
I think there's some math phobia to it. I think we also have layers and layers of sort of axioms or beliefs that people have about money, where people don't get the realities of what things are or mean. So things like, they don't understand how interest rates on credit cards, add up. Or they think, well, you got to spend money to make money. And they want to be able to, go swipe their credit card and like spend a lot without really figuring out, how will spending that then make me money? So they don't connect those things. Also, I think, there's ego in that sometimes they don't want to face the facts. It's like, hey, I want to own a business. And to them, it's like my business is me driving around in a truck, bossing people around. No one's telling me what to do. It could be something like that. So they just go head in the sand and go for it, and sometimes fall flat. Or they realize, hey, I'm wasting a lot of money. I could be keeping this for me, and they get it together and realign what they're doing.
Yeah, I think it is ego, and I think it's the reality of situations. I think that there's people out there that maybe sell bananas and don't want to understand how many bananas they have to sell to be profitable and live the lifestyle that they want to live. And they don't go down the path of figuring it out. Because, like you said, like, I want to be a small business owner. I want to do what I want. I want to take Fridays off. I want to drive around in my truck and yell at people all the time. They don't want to actually figure out, like, does this make sense? And maybe they know, right? And they just don't want to actually figure it out. Or like they just don't want their dream to be pulled from them, type of thing, and figuring out that reality. So
Yeah, and I think there's lots of, I mean, in general finances, there is that fear. I think again, everyone has different sort of what they're afraid of. Oftentimes if people have, some debt or they have problems budgeting, the big problem is often they're not making enough money, right? And you think, oh no, I'm trapped. I can't make a lot more money or significantly more. So it's like, how do I create a plan to do that? Or their lifestyle doesn't fit with what they're spending onto the personal side. On the business side, the same way. I think people haven't wrapped their heads around just how the finances flow or how hard things are. You might think, oh, I can do this better than anyone else. And, I'm going to charge cheaper and I'm going to do better work and I'll just make more money. But then you realize how hard it is to like make one sale or make $1. And, until you make $1 as a small business owner, I don't think anyone understands how hard it is to convince someone else to give you money. Right. Then you've got to realize all the things you're going to have to invest in. Before we started recording, we were talking about like marketing and, how many leads people need to meet certain goals. And like, that's a lot of investment that you have to make in, in marketing. Could be in, your own self and self development. If you're going to do elements of that in hiring, experts to help you out. And there's a lot of uncertainty around who to trust, what you need. Are you getting the right person for that? Um, so I think it all sort of feeds into that fear, and it's easy to ignore. But the people who figure it out, sort of with their finances in mind, are the ones who are going to be the most successful.
Yeah, and the last two businesses that I launched, I think the first thing besides like kind of understanding the concept in your head, the first thing I thought about was the financial side of it with Starting Point, which was okay, we need to do something that's more affordable for the businesses in Kawartha Lake, specifically very much at the time was retail businesses with smaller margins and trickier selling product and not being able to generate a bajillion dollars a year type of thing and put that money towards marketing, which frankly, it's extremely difficult to track your retail marketing ROI. Anyways, so after I came up with the concept, the first thing I started thinking about was like, how do we make this profitable? And putting together just like a process based strictly on cost. And the same thing with Thrive. The first two things that we looked at were, does this space make sense? And we brought in a designer, Home by Tim and Chris, as our who before we signed a lease. And we're like, hey, does this make sense, this space? I still, up until weeks ago, maybe even 2 weeks ago, didn't really understand if it made sense. The space, the size of it in there, like the offices, I thought they're going to be too small. I thought the boardroom was going to be too small. I thought the podcast studio was going to be too small. I thought the shared space was going to be too small. Not until maybe the last week or two where I was in there and now things are almost done, walls up, ceilings and all that, where you're starting to see, okay, this does make sense. And this designer, of course, knew what he was doing, but we had to like take that step first. And then step two was finances, which was a plan of like, here's your expenses every month. And how do we get to this dollar figure? And started pricing things that way. And that's how we ended up changing the original price of the private office rentals, where in my head it was like, I won't even say how much I wanted to do originally, but it would have been stupid and it made no sense for a lot of different reasons. And that was like a big reality. The first time I ever thought of the co-working space, before it was called Thrive, years before it was called Thrive, like it was 2018. Now we're recording this in 2022 and we're like weeks from opening. But I first thought of it in 2018, and the thought was just a giant co-working space. You walk in and it's just 2,000 to 5,000 square feet of open tables and people working together, until my friend Brian, the profit coach, explained to me, you're never, ever, ever, ever going to make your money back charging people $30 a day or whatever the price is. Like, you need offices in there. You need people in there for chunks of time. And there's other reasons why you need the price and the finances to be more than we originally talked about. There's other external problems and internal or whatever. But just purely from a pricing perspective, we had to figure that out right away before we jump into this project. Am I ever going to make my money back? How are we going to do this?
Yeah, that's the designing something to be profitable, and also the mix of types of clients. I think any business needs a path to upgrade. So you need like small, medium, large type of packages. Um, I think, the co-working space has that. You can come for a day if you want, but you can also come and make that your home for cheaper than you're going to find another office, and it's going to be way, way better.
Heck yeah.
I've already tasted the coffee that's going to be there, and like, you're probably not finding better in town. So it's, has, lots of those elements that you need, and that mix together, you know, has to make sense. So you have to do the basic math of, does this make sense for the cost to put it in, to build it what it needs, the, cost of capital, the opportunity cost of your time as well,
Yeah.
which a lot of people don't factor in. And you have to design it to be profitable. And the actual math elements of it aren't that hard. I always say they're all going to change anyway, so you don't have to be down to the penny correct, but you have to be in the right ballpark neighborhood, which isn't too hard. And it's creating that framework to make sure that it is, profitable. And when it is, it gives you confidence to stick to your plan, where hey, I need to do this much marketing to do it, and you can try stuff. And if it's not working, then you change up your marketing plan or your marketer or whatever you may need to do for that. But it gives you those options when you know exactly what you're doing and focused on and how it leads to a profitable business.
Yeah, with the budget, you don't need to be at the right location right away, but you need to be in the right neighborhood. So at least you
Yeah.
can walk to the right place. Write that one down,
Yeah. It's one
profit
of those.
coach. Use that with your clients.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to be close by. Like, I think we were talking earlier, if you're trying to make $2.5 million, and to do that, you need 1,000 customers
Yeah.
in your first year. And that's your goal. That's a great goal. But you're going to have to spend more than $100 a month on marketing to do that. Right. Like that's an extreme example. But, everybody has those types of realities. Right. Even, opening Thrive the way you wanted to do it, there's going to be a cost to the materials, the labor, the design, creating it. Like you can't pretend it's going to be a third the price that it actually is. And I think a lot of the fear in financing is not knowing how things work together. And, the first step could just be some, immersion into reality, finding someone who can explain it, and then you can make your decisions for how to navigate it from there.
Yeah, and it's all about realities. And, who am I if I'm going to turn around and look for a contractor to say, okay, your price was this, and then I'm like, that's too expensive. I don't know what's expensive. I don't know what the reality is. You're the one that often tells me like people don't understand the reality of costs until they see it, and sometimes they react that way. They're like, oh, that's too expensive. And also from not even a negotiation perspective, but just from again, like let's be in the same neighborhood when we had Eastman Plumbing come out and look at the building and provide a price, and they asked, like, what's your budget for this? Do you know what this is going to be? First of all, put your ego into it. You're going to look like an idiot if you don't have an idea. You're going to look like an idiot if you don't have a budget for stuff like this. You're also going to look like an idiot if you're like, oh, this 2,000 square foot building that's a complete gut that has holes in the floor and was an old laundromat. I think it's going to cost 10 grand to renovate. You're going to look like an idiot then as well. So then when they turn around and say the cost was 20 grand, you're going to be, wow, that's really expensive. But in reality, it wasn't really expensive. That's just the cost of this type of product and service.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's, a series of those types of things when you're tackling and learning your finances, especially for the first time, as a business owner, depending on your business, and sometimes it's not right. Sometimes you do have to go look for other costs or other ways. But like
Yeah.
step one is reality, right? There's a reality of cash flow and that, you're going to have to remit HST or you're going to have to pay back your loans, or you're going to have an office that needs lights, or staff. You're going to have to actually pay people for the labor, that they do, right? You can't, and this is where I came up with the term wishonomics, right? You can't like wish things are just going to be completely different than the reality when it comes to like costs and finances. So you got to just get over that fear and get into it. And then also realize there's no perfect path for you. You're a different business and you're unique. And you can choose to solve your own problems in sort of many different ways.
Yeah, for sure. That was one of the first things that we did or like made sure that we had taken care of was someone on the team that we're paying salary to or giving a paycheck to. And it honestly is a huge opportunity cost for us. And I'm helping my wife, who's the office manager in all of this or operations manager in all of this. under like kind of coaching her in business because like this is very new to her. She's very scared, very nervous. She's like, who do I go to when I have questions if I'm the person that you're supposed to go to for the question?
Yeah.
And she gave me this morning. She's like, I added some new things to the project management software for the person that we're working with to do today. And she's like, I don't really know what else I'm supposed to do, like looking for my advice. And I'm like, then you've done your job and you are done for the day. That's what we're supposed to be doing as owners. So like we cannot be so dependent to that office that if we are not there, the whole thing falls apart. That's a huge issue with business, and that's a different conversation I'm getting into.
Yeah.
But you need to be
Different
aware.
conversation.
Yeah, you need to be aware of these things. Like that financial part of having staff needs to be there right away.
I still think actually that's a good, maybe segue to another episode, because I think that's still about fear of finances and fear of facing those realities and understanding them, because, it also could help make you sort of, or lead you to that strategic decision that's going to help you make more money, right? By not being as involved and tied to businesses. But that is a conversation for another time, I think. Any final thoughts on being afraid of finances?
Don't be afraid of finances. Like they're only scary if you avoid them. They're only scary if you do not address them. And you're better off addressing them and understanding them, at least to a degree, as soon as humanly possible if you're running your business. And you don't need to be the one to understand it. Find someone that understands it. There's professionals out there, as there are professionals for everything. So
perfect. On that note, if you are listening to this and are afraid of your finances, we would love to help you. Check us out at kawarthasmallbusinesspodcast.ca or send us an email to setitup@kawarthasmallbusinesspodcast.ca.